Hello, Canucks fans, and welcome back to another episode of Canucks Conversation, brought to you, as always, by the folks over at Greta, a great spot for all games, home and away. If you missed out on the first Canucks Army viewing party, there's going to be another one coming up shortly, so stay tuned for details on that. Just minutes from the arena, come by before or after the game, or whatever event you're downtown for. With weekly drink specials, Greta Bar YVR is the place to be. 50 West Cordova Street. Let the games begin. Harman, sneaky good food on the street food menu. The mac and cheese. Did you try the mac and cheese when you were there?
No, I saw you trying it, but
It was good.
I'm not a mac and cheese guy, but it looked decent if you are a mac and cheese guy.
I'm a big mac and cheese guy.
Did some rice bowl, which I don't know if it's new or if it had always been on the menu, but tried it for the first time and it was pretty good.
They got mac fries too. Like that's the other new thing was like Big Mac fries. Thought I might have to check that out, but I didn't get around to it on the first watch party, so I'll get to it at some point, I'm sure. Some talk of trading Elias Paterson in the chat to fire us up on this Tuesday morning. People in the chat wondering aloud if Elias Paterson can be traded or if he has a no-move clause. I'm not going to lie to you, Harm. I've been playing a lot of Call of Duty Black Ops, the new game. I was playing last night with one of my friends who's a Canucks fan, and he asked me the same question. He's like, "Hey, I'm not saying they should do it or that they will do it, but like just out of curiosity, can they trade Elias Paterson this year?" The answer is yes. Like he doesn't have a no-move clause until next year, but we're not going to talk about that today. But people were wondering if there's a no-move clause or anything like that. There's no clause on the first year of the contract, so start us up on this Tuesday afternoon with trading Elias Paterson. That's the first thing that people wanted to talk about today. But Harm, let's talk about this loss, an overtime loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. And quite frankly, the Canucks are lucky to come out of this game with a point. Kevin Lankinen was once again spectacular. 28 saves on 32 shots, but the nature of those saves were spectacular. He was phenomenal once again for the Canucks. And honestly, like we're probably going to talk about it at some point. You can't go away from Lankinen. It's important to get Shelovs in there, but it's more important to get wins when a goalie is playing, as well as Lankinen's playing right now.
For sure. And I mean, there's two ways of kind of looking at that game, right? Where this was the toughest test for the Canucks this year. I think by far Carolina was a much tougher opponent than even Tampa Bay, who they lost to. And of course, Florida without Barkov and Tkachuk just wasn't the same team. And especially after a run of games where they're playing against weaker teams, I imagine the transition, especially this early in the season, was probably a bit of a shell shock. And yeah, I mean, the Hurricanes just killed the Canucks through the neutral zone, especially. Carolina was by far the better team, fortunate to pick up the loser point by getting it to overtime, but even though you can sort of look at that performance and say it wasn't close to good enough, the way I'm choosing to kind of view it is we're so early in the season, and given the context of how, like the jump up from playing these bad teams to now playing a team of Carolina's quality, plus you're adjusting to systems tweaks and wanting to open it up, integrating new players, I'm not too worried that in their first measuring stick game, they fell short, just because you can tell Carolina's such a well-oiled machine that they're just the same. They start on time every season. And for the Canucks, I take it as a positive that even though we haven't seen their A game yet, they've still been racking up points, finding ways to collect and make sure that they're not losing in regulation. I still think that counts for something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the points matter. Like the points are on the board, and that's why I say you probably want to stick with Lankinen, is these points definitely matter. Outside of 10 minutes, the Canucks got outplayed in that game. The Hurricanes were just faster. They were, like you said, a well-oiled machine. They were moving the puck better than the Canucks were. It was tough to watch at times last night, but it wasn't tough to watch Kevin Lankinen, who, again, just 5-alarm save after 5-alarm save. He was he was so good. Like, he made so many saves. That game could have been out of reach. Like, that game could have been like a 5-1, 6-1 loss, but it wasn't because of Kevin Lankinen. He kept them within striking distance, and then eventually, as they so often do later in games, the Canucks Stars kind of took over a little bit, and there was that 10-minute stretch there where they really played some of their best hockey. Can we hear from Rick Tocchet post-game, who, again, basically assessed the game the way that I just did, where he was very happy with 10 minutes of the game, but was pretty concerned about what he saw from his team the rest of the way.
First of all, what do you make of the resilience of your group to battle back and kind of turn the game in that third period?
Yeah, the last 10 minutes was great. But before that, we have to learn I don't think we were ready to play. Carolina was. They believed in what they were doing. Beat us to pucks. And we had a lot of guys early on not moving their feet, not winning battles. And then we decided to do the things, and we made a game of it. So take the positive out, getting it to the point, but I still think there's lessons to be learned.
You made a couple of tweaks to your lines. You elevated Arsh in the third period. You elevated Branstrom at times as well. What are you seeing from those two guys in particular right now?
Yeah, skating. I thought those guys were skating a little bit, trying to get some guys going, so I just tweaked the lines.
Do you want to start there? Do you want to start with the guys that got elevated? Nils Höglander's not going to be on that line anymore. It sure looks like. That's going to come in our practice notes, and J-Pat's going to join us soon to talk about that. But, like, Harm, where do you want to start with what Tocchet said there?
Yeah, as far as why the Canucks got outplayed, it really was the neutral zone both ways in terms of why Carolina was dominating plays. I think when you're playing teams like Philadelphia and Chicago, you have extra time and space to make those quick decisions, and especially early in the season when you're still sort of adjusting to the pace of regular season play, it feels like you've got a margin for error. Whereas playing Carolina, there was no margin for error. Anytime a Canuck got the puck, it didn't matter what part of the ice it was, defensive zone, offensive zone, off an entry, there was a Carolina skater there right on top of you with immaculate gap control. And I just don't think that Vancouver Spurs are ready for that type of pressure, for having to make quick, decisive decisions that soon, and sort of understand that, hey, when you're playing a team that's as stifling, as suffocating as Carolina, when they're defending the blue line, it's got to be bang, bang decisions. And I think that's an area where, especially in the first period, the number of times that the Canucks were turning pucks over at the offensive blue line, and not even when they were trying to carry it through the neutral zone. I'm even talking about they're just trying to gain the red line and dump it in. Even those dump ins were a lot of times getting gloved out of the air or picked off. And it's so difficult to get any momentum going. It's so difficult to get your forecheck established when you're consistently making those mistakes. And when you turn those pucks over, that's when Carolina, with their speed, just came flying down. And I just mentioned how stifling Carolina was through the neutral zone, how there was no space to sort of build up speed. The opposite was kind of true with the Canucks. And part of it is because they're connected, where if you turn pucks over, then defensively, you're just not well positioned in the neutral zone to handle speed on the counterattack. That's where Carolina was able to torch the Canucks off the rush. So many opportunities, so many odd man rushes, a lot of side-to-side saves that Lankinen had to make where he's exploding from one post to the other. They were leaky off the rush, the Canucks were defensively, and I think it's tied together. It's not a coincidence that the Canucks' inability to safely manage the puck through the neutral zone and make plays and enter the Carolina zone also then resulted in them giving up transition chances defensively.
And that's the thing. We were talking about creating off the rush. They were talking about defending off the rush. Tocchet spoke about the pre-scout. I don't think we have a clip on this, but I wrote about it at Canucks Army, kind of just transcribed what he said. There was one thing that he said. He talked about body position, how he wasn't very pleased with his team in that regard, but he did say this. He said, it's early in the season, but we need some guys to take the information we give them and apply it. And we knew they flip a lot of pucks. As soon as they get it, they punt the ball, right? So you can't dive in. You have to be above their guy. But the frustrating thing for the staff is we explained that to them for the last 2 days when they play this team. So I felt that a couple guys were diving in. That's why they got those odd man rushes. Can't happen anytime, but especially against Carolina because they're very good at it. Yeah, Tocchet said good things about Lankinen, Branstrom, and Baines. But aside from that, he wasn't very pleased with his team's performance. Let's hear his answer about the Paterson line that he was asked about. Talked about Nils Höglander here.
It's a high-pressure team. We had the odd time when we had a couple looks. Actually, the game plan worked.
Just your commentary on sort of why you decided to approach your deployment that way and what you saw from that line tonight.
Well, obviously, when you change, you don't like it, right? So I didn't like a couple things there. Didn't like Hoggy at all. Listen, I'm not going to pick on that line. I just felt that I wanted to make a couple of changes.
What did you see out of your power play tonight?
Yeah, we're going to have to make some changes. Not working hard enough. Very lackadaisical on. That's a high-pressure team. We had the odd time when we had a couple of looks. Actually, the game plan worked. When Hughes threw at the net, we had Millsy almost scored in front. That's the key against this pressure power play, is being able to make one or two plays and then get it to the net. I thought a couple of guys there were playing slow. You can't play a slow against a high pressure PK. You just can't. So we're going to have to make I think I'm going to make a couple of changes. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay, so he didn't want to talk about Elias Paterson, stopped himself before answering, but he did say he didn't like Höglander at all, and then he was about to start talking about Elias Paterson. So you do the math there, but he stopped himself. He didn't say anything about Elias Paterson. And honestly, Harm, like I think we need to talk about JT Miller and especially his D-zone coverage on that overtime goal. That's the old JT Miller that was supposed to clean everything up. I get Tocchet probably isn't going to come out and call out JT Miller because A, he's probably playing hurt. We know he was dealing with something heading into the season. And B, this is your catalyst. This is your guy that scores all your big goals. So you're probably not going to go call him out in the media. I get it, but I think it's fair for us to do. Like, I think it's fair to say, yeah, JT Miller wasn't good enough last night, especially in that overtime. Like, you're watching it and you just see Sebastian Aho open and he's like waving for the puck and you're like, who's on him? Who's on him? Who's on him? The answer was it was supposed to be JT, but he wasn't. And Sebastian Aho obviously scores the goal. I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, and also on one of Carolina's second period goals, Hughes was sort of pinching up the wall. Miller was supposed to be covering there, and he just lost coverage there, and Carolina ended up with the odd man rush, where that was the goal where they went east-west. Lankinen really had no chance on it. But again, I'm going to cut Miller slack. Again, we know he's working his way back from injury, but also he's so consistently been good for them that if he has an off night, it's not ideal, of course. But I'm going to give him, obviously, a pass for it. Plus, at least that line was threatening at times offensively. It felt like the rest of the lineup wasn't really like, it felt like Miller, Besser, Hughes were the only players that were consistently threatening offensively. To me, anyway. I don't know if you disagree.
No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree with you. Like, there's no disagreement there. I just think it's worth mentioning, especially with all the Paterson trade Paterson talk in the chat. I think it's worth mentioning that JT Miller wasn't great last night. Is that like that? I think that's just fair.
That's fine.
That's a fair assessment of last night's game. Jeff Paterson's here. We're gonna get to him in a second. Is there anything else? Like, we'll talk about the power play changes, big air quotes there, with Jeff when he joins. But like, is there anything else that you really want to get to before we get to Jeff?
Let's just get to Jeff.
Let's just get to Jeff, who is brought to you by the Vancouver Whitecaps. A great effort with a couple bounces going the wrong way had the Whitecaps fall to LA in Game 1 of their first-round matchup in the 2024 MLS Cup playoffs. Come out and support the Whitecaps on their MLS Cup playoff run. Game 2 of the best-of-3 series with LAFC is this Sunday at 5:45 at BC Place. Tickets for this playoff match are on sale now. Click the link in our episode description or go to ticketmaster.ca/Whitecaps. Let's bring him in. Jeff Paterson, our man at the rink, who made it home. I'm happy to see. That backdrop is so good, Jeff. That backdrop is great. None of us are matching today. I think it's a great day here on Canucks Conversation. How was practice today, Jeff?
Yeah, we're off to a great start. You're right, and looking good. Underwhelming, to be perfectly honest with you. Like, I went to the rink this morning. I know I had texted you, and I was like, I think there might be some serious changes. There's going to be some storylines. And we get there, and, DeBrusk's out there with Besser and Miller, and Petey and Garland together. Now, that was one of the switches that Archie Baines got the promotion and Nils Höglander got bumped down, and they're not touching that third line right now. But really, the other change, I guess, is Noah Juulsen looks like he's going to get an opportunity to draw back in. Forbert and Desharnais were the extras, so you're looking at Branstrom and Juulsen. But the way Rick Tocchet just played some of those clips, like, he was exasperated at the podium last night. And it felt like in that moment that, yeah, he was going to go home, might be a sleepless night, and, try and reinvent this entire team. All of that said, they have one regulation loss in the 8 games that they've played. And I think he recognizes that this isn't panic time by any stretch, but I was a little surprised. I thought we might see a few different looks. And I guess the real surprise for me was when you heard him basically pound the podium last night and say there's going to be changes on the power play, and then trot out the same 5 guys on power play 1. And they didn't do a lot of power play time. At the end of practice, JT left a little early. I don't think there was anything to that. But yeah, I mean, the same 5 with Garland as part of that group now, and Jake DeBrusk remains on the second unit. And look, you saw what a really good penalty killing team in Carolina was able to do to the Canucks. 3 minor penalties, so 3 power plays, 3 shots on goal, and Daniel Sprong had 2 of them. Like, start to do the math there. The first unit, I don't know about you guys, but we've seen other times where they struggled to gain the zone. The entries have been a problem. Some of the passing hasn't been great. Last night really felt to me like that first unit power play was just offloading problems. Like, hot potato, puck would come and guy wouldn't handle it cleanly, and then he'd just get rid of it. And like, I don't want it. You take it. And again, Carolina pressures so much. Connor Garland talked about that. He said they knew it, and Garland was disappointed in the way that this team failed to meet pressure with pressure, in the words of a head coach in these parts. So, the power play has scored twice in a couple of games against Calgary and against Chicago. That bumps the overall raw percentage up, but those are the Flames and those are the Blackhawks. And when you see them against a really good penalty killing team, looked completely inept last night.
Are there any changes you'd like to see them experiment with, as far as maybe a new player on that top unit, or even if it's going to be the same 5 personnel, a different look as far as the setup that they have with the 1-3-1, or even philosophically, like, what tweaks would you maybe like to see for that top unit?
Right, and I think that's part of the challenge for the coaching staff is these are the players you've got. They were all all-stars last year. These are incredible players at the National Hockey League level. I thought it was interesting commentary from the coach today. He was asked a lot about the power play and the fact that there weren't changes, and basically said, like, Yogi Sveikovsky, the assistant coach who's overseeing the power play, he's like, he made a great presentation again this morning. It's not the systems, it's not the coaching. Like, he really went to bat for the sort of the systems that they're employing, and then said sometimes you get these skilled guys and they think they can skill the puck into the net, and that's just not the case. The penalty killing unit is working hard and outworking your power play. So again, a few pointed comments from the coach. I asked about the lack of one-timers from Elias Paterson just because I'm sort of fascinated by it, and he came right back to this idea that PD just stands still. And he says it's too easy to defend, and that's why that he said it's not that they're saying don't pass to Elias Pettersson, keep it away from him. But he said, like, PD's got to move and then get back into a position where that one timer becomes an option. And so hard to disagree with that. But how many times have we heard Rick Tocchet when he hasn't really wanted to carve Elias Pettersson, but comes back to this, he's got to move his feet. Like, that's the criticism that the coach elects to go with. So to your question, Harm, if I had the answers, I would sell them to Rick Tocchet for like $1 billion, and then I would probably retire to a beach somewhere. But I'm not sure that anybody's got the answers other than these guys have to figure it out. These are elite level players, and it's so frustrating to watch when they can't move the puck. And we've seen it. We've all seen, like, when that power play is on and is so dynamic and they make it look easy. Unfortunately, far too often this season in the 25 power plays that they've had, they're 5 for 25. So again, 20% is not a terrible percentage. You'd like it to be a few percentage points higher, but it's the fact that 4 of the 5 goals have come in 2 games, and the other games, there really hasn't been a whole lot there. So, I'm not here for wholesale changes or completely reinventing the power play. I just put it at the feet of this group. I do think sometimes JT and Quinn get the blinders on a little too much over on that left-hand side, but today at practice, JT was set up on the right side, Connor Garland manning that left side, and then you had PD and Besser at the net front. So, if that's what they go into action against New Jersey with tomorrow's a new day, and we'll see what the power play looks like.
Jeff, the penalty kill held up its end of the bargain to some extent. One guy who really held up his end of the bargain, Kevin Lankinen. We were just talking about him to kind of kick off the show here, and my take is that they need to stick with him. I know you got to get Archer Shelovs in eventually. I would get him in on Saturday against San Jose. Right now you need points, and Kevin Lankinen is getting you points. You also don't know how long a goalie's going to stay on a hot streak is kind of my opinion. And I think Kevin Lankinen's good. I've talked about him a lot, but like, I would be going right back to Kevin Lankinen Wednesday in against New Jersey, excuse me.
Yeah, I thought there was a possibility. The fact that Lankinen had given up 3 goals in each of the games against Chicago and Pittsburgh, the door was open to a switch. I wasn't banging the drum, but Lankinen delivered victory, so I don't blame Rick Tocchet for coming back with him, and he was terrific. Ultimately, they lose in overtime. Nothing he can do on the overtime winner. But I'm with you. Against a dynamic team like New Jersey that's starting a road trip out here, when Jersey is clicking, you think back, like, they scored 6 on the Canucks here in Vancouver last year in early December. Canucks turned the tables. Both the games were wide open with a bunch of goals in the season series. Yeah, I think that's how New Jersey has liked to play in recent years. And so that probably is a tough assignment for Artur Silovs. Again, if the Devils are sharp at the top of their game, when you've got San Jose sitting there on Saturday as what would seem like a much easier landing spot, they do have to get Silovs in there. And I would think that Silovs is going to get one of San Jose or Anaheim to start the road trip. But yeah, I would come back with Kevin Lankinen. He was terrific. I mean, the number of pucks that got to the goal line last night and the toe of the skate blade. There were a couple of those instances where it looked like sure goals and he was able to make the stops. And he's been a revelation. He has been the Canucks' best player through 8 games. I don't think there's much doubt of that. Quinn Hughes is in that conversation, although what a weird night for Quinn last night. Doing all the offensive things with a goal and an assist and 26 minutes of ice time, but on the ice for the final 3 goals that the Carolina Hurricanes scored. And not pinning them all on him, but you were talking about the one where he got trapped up ice and JT didn't cover. There was the pass that went through him on the Natchez goal. And then on overtime, like, how do you have the Norris Trophy winner, a 100-point guy, and a 40-goal man? They don't touch the puck in overtime. Like, that's crazy. And then the defensive breakdown, and Tocchet called it puck watching today. So, yeah, long way of saying I'd probably stick with Lankinen for one more start. But, I mean, that's always the battle, right? Is trying to figure out when even a goalie that's on a heater, when is that play going to drop off? And inevitably it does for everybody. And you try to get ahead of that. So I think with the way the games have been spaced out here and at home and no travel and day off on Sunday, Lankinen probably got one more really good game in him, but it's probably getting close to a night off for him. And if Silovs was to get the game on Saturday, then Lankinen could play Wednesday game and wouldn't play again until presumably next Tuesday in Los Angeles or in Anaheim.
You mentioned the Canucks not touching the puck in OT. I thought it was really interesting, Carolina's strategy at the start of OT, where I remember seeing Jordan Staal and 2 defensemen, Slavin and Burns, and thinking, well, what are they doing here? Like, I don't quite understand the strategy, as opposed to just like getting Aho out there, getting another dynamic forward like a Svechnikov out there. And then I figured it out, where I bet if they win this draw, which Jordan Staal is a lead on draws, they're thinking, we'll get him off the ice. We'll get Burns immediately off the ice because we're controlling the puck. And then if you lose the draw, you've got your best shutdown center on the ice and you've got 2 defensemen. So you're well equipped to handle Vancouver's offensive star. So I thought that was a pretty clever strategy by Rod Brindamore to shift things to the top 6 tweak that we saw in practice. No secret that Höglander didn't have a great performance last night, but my initial thought seeing Baines in that spot and instead of Höglander is it feels a bit too quick. Like one game shouldn't be enough for Höglander to immediately drop to the 4th line, especially because I don't have enough confidence that Baines has a consistent level of top 6 offense to really deliver in that spot next to Paterson, especially Paterson sort of still trying to find his top form. But I'm curious what you make of that make of that change.
Yeah, look, Arshdeep scoring the other night was terrific, and it looked like he had scored in back-to-back games. And unfortunately for him, it was offside. I mean, when they reviewed that one, but I liked where he was slotted as a 4th line guy, because we've said it earlier. The look that he had last year and even the first few games this year, he's not a top 6 guy in the NHL at this stage. He's still developing, and maybe he gets there, but I'm with you, Harm. Right here, right now, this team is trying to figure things out. It always feels like the default scapegoat is just to bump Höglander. And look, Dakota Joshua is knocking on the door. Another practice today. Rick Tocchet said he went to the doctor yesterday. These are all steps towards getting him back. Tocchet was asked about a possible conditioning stint in the American Hockey League for Dakota Joshua. Said he hadn't talked to the player about that, but it had been discussed internally. And then in the same breath, he said he was probably leaning to just getting him in the NHL lineup and sort of managing his minutes and trying to ramp him up from there. So we'll see where it goes. Not going to play tomorrow against New Jersey, but I do think by the end of the week, Dakota Joshua becomes an option. And then there's the roster decision that they have to make to activate him, and then obviously the lineup as well. So some moving parts there. And, you know, if it's one game for Arshdeep Baines with Elias Pettersson and Garland, I suppose the one knock on Höglander, and look, he's had a nice start to the season. Doesn't have a ton of points, but he's been doing Nils Höglander things. His ice time has been up. On the, I think it was the Natchez goal. Look, it starts with an offensive zone face-off and went from offensive zone face-off and potentially a scoring opportunity for the Canucks to a 2-on-1 the other way in a hurry. Now, Desharnais with a bad pinch and nobody covered there. But if you watch the replay, and I would encourage people to go watch, Nils Höglander on the back check, his last stride is at center ice, and he just coasts. Now, NHS scores, so it doesn't really matter. But if he doesn't, it's play on, and you have to play to the whistle, and that's the kind of stuff that the coaches see, certainly. And so why Nils Höglander decided to stop skating on a play like that one, it's the NHL. Like, you can't take shifts off. This is a coach that always talks about the importance of line changes and those types of things. So that was sort of the glaring part for me on the night. Now, he had company. That line just didn't have it, and it happens sometimes. And the utilization, I know we talked about it on Rink Wide, but to see Elias Paterson with 11 minutes of even strength ice time over the course of a night, 3 minutes in the first period, one of the low guys, that's how you ultimately know what a coach is thinking about a player and a line's performance, is how he deploys them. And those guys they didn't have it really from the outset last night. So yeah, you'd like to chalk it up to an off night. Unfortunately, it's part of a broader conversation when it comes to Elias Pettersson. But for Nils Höglander, it looks like, yes, he's getting bumped down for this game against the Devils. And then if Dakota Joshua gets back in there, who's coming out? I hope it's not Nils Höglander. I don't think he deserves to come right out of the lineup, but somebody is going to have to sit here if they're going to plug Dakota Joshua back in for the first time this season.
Okay, question for the group, more of a talking point for the group. Harm, you feel free to chime in too. We need to start talking about Carson Susi. Like, I thought it was another really tough night for him. I saw the tweet this morning that said he has the worst expected goals for percentage and worst Corsi percentage of all NHL defensemen who've played at least 100 minutes this season. It's getting worse for Susi, and we talked about his slow start to the season. It's getting worse. Like, last night was worse.
And it's so strange because when he is at his best, and we saw it for long stretches, he was hurt twice last year, but he's just a low maintenance, go about your business, safe guy that the coaches trust. Now, we know in the playoffs, like the matchup, they got crushed, but they did a great job with their size, Myers and Susi, of keeping the Oilers to the perimeter. That was the way that they wanted to play. It's the loud mistakes. It kind of feels like this is Tyler Myers of a couple of years ago, that things are winding up in the back of the net, and just things that I don't know, I'm not used to seeing from Carson Susi in his time with the Canucks. Now, he was on the ice on the first goal, the Carrier one-timer, and probably gives Carrier a little bit too much space. But boy, if you roll that clip back, Vincent Desharnais, puck on his stick, no duress, and just fires it out to center. And this is the issue with Desharnais that they're going to have to live with, I suppose. But unfortunately, there's going to be occasions where those sort of miscues come right back at you, and against a team like Carolina, wound up in the back of the net. So could Susi have closed a little faster, maybe, on Carrier? It was a great shot. You don't expect, I don't think of Carrier as a one-time threat necessarily, but man, he got everything on that one. But yeah, and Harm, jump in by all means here, but to me, it's just sort of these uncharacteristic mistakes that we have seen from Carson Susi almost every game. And I know it's only 8, but it's also 8. Like, it's starting to add up here that there's just been way more mistakes than I would have anticipated to this point from a guy like Carson Susi.
Well, another thing that stood out is just watching Carolina's blue line. And again, this is a group that's adjusting to losing their entire second pair of Shea and Pesce, and they've been able to kind of move on from that without skipping a beat. Is the construction of their blue line is outside of Brent Burns. Everybody can skate, right? You look at how they tried to plug in the holes on the back end. They go out and acquire Gostisbehere and Walker to essentially be their third pair. And Orlov and Chatfield are kind of their de facto second pair now. All of those guys can skate. All of those guys can move the puck. And when I look at even Susi and Myers as a pair, it's not that they're slow in open ice, because we see it, especially for big guys, they move pretty well. They're not like Vincent Desharnais, where it's like they're going to get turnstiled. But the issue that I see is on defensive zone retrievals in tight spaces. They don't have the agility and the edge work to separate from forecheckers. And I think that's been the biggest sort of glaring issue for that pair. Is puck is dumped into the corner, and every time it goes in on Susi or Myers, I'm immediately thinking this puck isn't going to get out of the zone, because they just don't have that little bit of shiftiness, despite, again, them being fine as skaters in open ice, just in those corners, in those tight spaces. Like, you watch Gostisbehere, you watch Walker, you watch Orlov, those guys can move and they shake off forecheckers, and They just can't give themselves the separation. I'm not even talking about wheeling around the net Eric Branstrom or Quinn Hughes style to make great plays. I'm talking just that little window of space so that you have an extra second with full possession to get your head up and make a clean play. It's just all they have time to do when they get the puck is just try and rim it around the wall or go glassing out, and it's just not working right now.
Right. And Derek Forbort is more of the same in that regard. Now, he's not likely to get into the lineup, but he will play again for the Vancouver Canucks here. And so it is a glaring weakness. There's no question. That's why it's been a topic really from training camp and through these first 8 games, that this team can't get ultimately where it wants to go without a significant upgrade on the back end. Now, we saw last November it was the door up. Are they going to go right down that sort of road again? Do they have the assets to make those sorts of moves? We'll see how patient this management group will be. Patrick Galvin sitting in the stands at practice today, seeing for himself. So I'm sure they recognize a lot of those. I hope they do. Things that you just talked about there. But you're right. With the personnel that they've got, I don't see how it gets appreciably better in a lot of those areas unless they go out and alter this lineup.
Jeff, did we get a Thatcher Demko update at practice today?
Yeah, Rick Tocchet was asked about Demko and said 4 really good days, but I'm at a point where I don't know ultimately what that means. I'm glad to hear it, but as opposed to what qualifies as a good day these days, I still haven't seen Thatcher Demko in equipment on the ice since training camp. Like, it's November here at the end of the week. I saw the video of him in Chicago, tethered to that bungee cord. It looked like baby steps. But other than that, like, he's around the team. I've seen him in hallways and stuff. I saw, a couple of the games. I've seen him with Tyler Myers Nate the other night. He was there for the ceremony. So he's around this team. But in terms of us getting our own eyes on him, anybody that's at the rink, they're certainly keeping him away. And any workouts, I think, are being done early before the media is allowed into Rogers Arena. So Tocchet said 4 good days. But it's such a nebulous sort of, concept of where he is in all of this and ultimately what constitutes good days. Your guess is as good as mine. I still feel like he's going to be a ways away here. And again, that just underscores the importance of having Kevin Lankinen and the work that he has done for this hockey club. So yes, the update is 4 good days, Dave. Take that for what it's worth.
We'll take it. That's all we can do. Jeff, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and we will chat with you soon.
Well, including this one, I hope you guys have 4 good days of Canucks conversation for the remainder of this week. I'm sure. I have no doubt you will.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. That's great. There he is, Jeff Paterson, the host of Rink Wide Vancouver. You can catch all of those shows just moments after the final horn. They do a great job. Irfan Ghaffar and Jeff Paterson. Sometimes we co-host too. I think I'm going to be co-hosting one coming up here. So make sure you tune into that one, folks. But yeah, our thanks again to Jeff Paterson. So Harm, like Jeff said, pretty underwhelming. Like the title of this show is Changes Are Coming. The changes are Steve Baines and Noah Juulsen coming into the line. Well, Baines obviously moving up the lineup. That one, I must say, I really hope that's a short experiment. I'll just say it. Like, sure, Baines almost scored another goal last night. That'd be great. Let's see what he can do. But I hope it's not one of these things that it's game after game after game. There's no points going on the board, and we're just sitting there wondering, okay, like when are we going to put him back into the bottom 6? Where like that's not even a knock on Baines. It's just you alluded to it as well. He doesn't really have the offensive chops to play top 6 in the NHL, which isn't really an insult. He can produce from the 4th line. There's nothing wrong. There's value in that. I really hope this is a short experiment. If it's not working, just move off of it quickly. I can live with it that we're starting it again, but let's move off of it a lot quicker than we did last time.
Yeah, if it's just meant to be like a one-game message to Höglander after the sort of defensive breakdown that he pointed out where he just coasted and completely stopped back checking. If it's more a message about that and really trying to drill home that, hey, that's unacceptable and this is sort of like a one-game punishment as opposed to being taken out of the lineup, that's fine. But if it isn't going for a game, I don't want this, like you said, to be an extended experiment because we've seen the type of 5-on-5 offensive production that Höglander can produce. He's never going to be a huge point producer because we've talked about this before. He doesn't get enough power play opportunity to sort of pad his stats there. But at 5-on-5, We're talking about a player that last year was top 10 among all forwards in goals, and even in his rookie season was, I think, top 50 among all forwards in either 5-on-5 points or goals. Like, he's a player that consistently produces at even strength. He should be playing up the lineup. So fully with you there.
And looked like a good fit. Looked like a good fit prior to last night with Garland and Elias Paterson. Let's get to anyone else, which is brought to you by White Spot. At White Spot, they're all about enjoying great, comforting food and spending quality time with loved ones. With the new comfort menu, White Spot is focusing on cozy, satisfying flavors that are perfect to enjoy with family. Available now and developed by the White Spot culinary team, the comfort menu is filled with warm, indulgent dishes designed to make you feel right at home. The new menu features mouthwatering new additions like mini Yorkies, the braised beef burger, the homestyle pot roast, and backed by popular demand, the iconic chicken pot pie. Bring your family to White Spot for a delicious meal, perfect for the season. Visit your local White Spot today. Okay, we've got a lot in the chat here for anyone else. Let's get to it. Let's get to some of these as well. This one right now from Ariel C. How does Paterson, as he is right now, compare to the Paterson of the first half of 2021-22? I'm sure this is asking from a statistical perspective, but I did want to point out some context with these two splits, okay? So start of 21-22, he had the new contract, new expectations, missed training camp. That was another story here when it came to Paterson at the start of the 21-22 season. But one thing I will say, Harm, is when he figured it out, like, he was talking about how, yeah, like, I'm glad I went through that. I know what went wrong and I know how to come out of it now. And I don't think it's going to happen again type thing. I don't know if those two situations are comparable. I'd be maybe I'll ask Paterson next time I get the chance to talk to him after a practice or whatever. But like, I don't think those are comparable because I think this is a lot more about his knee injury. Like, I think to me, like, that's the biggest thing is he goes through this knee injury, points to it at the end of season media avail as the reason he slowed down, or, you know, he was asked about when it started affecting him. Shocker. It was right when his shooting started dipping, when all of his play started dipping, when he started looking more and more like Bambi on skates. That all happened at the end of that end of last season when he started to have these issues with the knee. Then he comes into training camp this year and says, yeah, it's a nagging injury that doesn't want to go away. And then he's quick to say, oh, well, it's fine now. It's fine now. Okay. If he looks the exact same as he did last year when this knee injury was supposedly bothering him, to me, like, that's a simple equation. To me, it's the knee. Like, to me, it looks like just he's dealing with the same thing, and I don't know what the path forward is, but I don't think those are the same situations, personally.
He just looks slow, right?
Yeah.
As a dynamic play driver, we're used to when he's at his best, he can just do things on his own. And again, it helps that he's playing with Garland, who can do some of the heavy lifting there. But at a certain point, Paterson needs to be that guy too. He needs to be able to create offense on his own, where even if his line mates aren't going on a given night, that he can sort of be the one to shoulder the load. And this is, I believe PJ brought it up. The NHL Edge data shows this too, as far as his like speed bursts above 20 miles per hour. They're down compared to seasons past. So it's statistically proven right now that his skating isn't where it used to be. And I'm with you there, where I wonder how much of the impact is the knee, but also like even on the power play, the shot, right? I don't know if this has anything to do with the wrist or not. I just don't feel like he's a shooting threat anymore, right? He's got two shots on goal in the power play this entire season. And of course, it's 8 games. We're not talking about, it's been 20 games.
Still, I think that's a fair sample size. I don't think that's a unfair thing for you to bring up. I think that's totally fair what you're saying.
Yeah, it's 28 minutes and a second of power play time where he's only mustered 2 shots on goal and just 3 shot attempts, right? Yeah. So it's not as if he's, like, for context, last year, in 81 games, he had 136 shot attempts. So, like, very clearly he was, like, well above a shot attempt per game on the power play. He's at 3 and 8. Like, he's not shooting the puck on the power play. And again, I'm sure some of it is he could do more away from the puck to get open. But also, in his rookie season, he was stand and deliver. Like, all he would need is to be teed up in the wheelhouse. Yeah. And this isn't like after those first 10 games, you would notice that, okay, penalty killers aren't letting him stand and deliver anymore because they know we got to cheat over to stop this one-time bomb. but nobody's really cheating over to Paterson that aggressively anymore. You know what I mean? So that's a concern for me. And I mean, the entire first unit was off the mark in so many different ways on the man advantage, but Paterson as well. Like, he was chief among the players that made unforced giveaways and passes back to the point. Like, the power play last night was, I mean, there's just so many issues compounding to them not being able to get set up in the first place. I mean, first of all, they were losing most of the faceoffs, which means you're going to have to go all the way back. And then their entries have been an issue. The entries have really, really been problematic. But even when they would initially get into the zone and they're trying to get set up, then it'd be those unforced giveaways that would squeeze out of the zone, and now you're having to regroup again. They're just not able to get set up in the first place. And yeah, I mean, it's concerning.
Absolutely. And the power play, like, they're all slow. The power play is all slow. And not just to pick on Paterson, but like with Paterson specifically, it's okay, you get the pass, and instead of taking a one-timer, it's okay, I'm going to corral it, now I'm going to stand still and wait for something. And what you're really waiting for is the penalty killer to come out and attack you, because that's what keeps happening. Like, you corral the puck, and then it's not even a double clutch thing. It's just okay, now I have it, now I'm going to stand still and wait. And I'm going to wait for something to open up, and then what happens? The penalty killer attacks. Like, that's what's happening. It's not a shooting threat. And again, not to just pick on PD, because this is happening to a lot of guys on that power play. It's okay, we're going to attack, but we're going to attack slowly, and we're going to get set up. And then if a PK like Carolina comes at you, they just don't have an answer. And it's just tough to watch. And I know Tocchet was really pissed about it last night. And when he said they're going to make changes, obviously we thought that might mean personnel. A lot of people in the chat saying put Daniel Sprong on PP1. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. But when we thought it was going to be personnel, it looks like it's going to be more changes to making those guys listen to what the coaching staff is saying. So we'll see. We'll see if it works, and we'll see how that goes. But that was really the only Canucks stuff in the chat and the stuff that I wanted to point out.
Speaking of Sprong, because we've railed on about a lot of negative things for a while, I thought another really good game for him. The Suter goal, that is really created because of Sprong's speed through the neutral zone on the counterattack. Forcing Tocchet into sort of diving out and completely missing his net. But not just that, for Sprong to, in that high pressure moment, make the pass across successfully to Suter. That's a really impressive play. And the Canucks don't tie that game up without Sprong's speed and skill on that play.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really strong game for him. I'm glad you pointed that out, because it sounds like a lot of negatives today, but that was a positive. Be great if he played in the top six again, but we're going to see RC Bates, who, again, we understand why. He's trusted defensively, and Sprong obviously hasn't gotten to that point just yet. This question from Ollie Sventon in the chat. He said, should PD rest to get healthy? I've been saying this since training camp, Harm. You'll remember I told this to you on a patio in Penticton when we were doing a show. I told you the day Elias Paterson said that comment about it's a nagging injury that doesn't want to go away. I was saying this all throughout training camp. I said it on Carson Price. I said it on our show, and I will repeat it. If Elias Paterson is dealing with a knee injury, again, that doesn't want to go away, and this is the result, is he's just going to play like he did last year. And I've been singing his praises the past few games. Not so much last night, but he was fine last night. Like, I don't think he was the reason they lost or anything like that. But Tocchet clearly wasn't very happy with what he saw from Paterson last night. I am a big supporter of Elias Paterson just taking off the time he needs, or going to get whatever surgery he needs, or figuring out whatever he needs to get back to who he was, rather than just keeping this going. If this is going to be the result, and this is just the Paterson that everybody has to get used to, because look, the temperature's turning up in the market. And what I will say about these good performances we've seen from Elias Paterson the last 3 games, minus last night, if you want, what I was saying was, this is the baseline of what a star player should be. Like, your off nights, you maybe chip in with an assist here and there. You score a goal against Pittsburgh, that's great. That's not an off night, in my view. It's the 3 games that were before Pittsburgh that I look at and say, like, those are a superstar or a star level player's off nights. Like, just looking around the league, that's the standard. That's the standard, is you're still playing a lot, but you're not negatively impacting the team. Like, that's the standard. Can he play up to that standard? Fine, but that's an off night. That's not the ceiling. And again, I know the bar's been lowered, but man, like, that is the floor, not the ceiling of what a star player should be.
For sure. And when it comes to this conversation around, like, it's I can't really speculate and go into detail about his knee and
Sure.
what the Canucks should or shouldn't do with it because we don't have the information on that, right? We don't know how much of an improvement would he get from time off, because sometimes injuries like the nagging ones, I don't know. I just don't know. Like sometimes there are ailments where it's like you can get a bit of time off, but is a week or two really going to do like get you back up to 100%, or is it going to be one of those things where it's like a temporary patch or solution?
Have you ever had tendonitis?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I had it in my elbow growing up, okay? And people in the chat are pointing this out as well. They're saying, like, tendonitis isn't really a thing that you can just rest up on. It was recommended to me that I get surgery at some point, but that was only like, okay, if you're going to play baseball all your life and you want to go play college or whatever, you're going to need to get this surgery. Not to do I could have made the league story, but this is just what I'm saying in my experience was they were just like, you don't really need it. Like, it's not going to affect you unless you throw a baseball. Elise Paterson's a pro hockey player. So if the recommendation is like, okay, this is something you can rest up and it might get better, but if it's not getting better, you might want to revisit the idea of surgery. If that's the diagnosis he's getting, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not trying to come out here and diagnose for him and say, oh, well, you need to rest, but it's whatever is going to get him back to who he was is kind of what I was trying to say.
Yeah, that makes sense, because you're right. They can't have him playing at this type of level the entire season, and of course not trying to overreact either, right? He's just coming off of a few decent performances.
Yep.
Bad performance against Carolina, no doubt, for him and his entire line. Maybe he'll bounce back next game, but we also saw this sometimes down the stretch where he'd have 2 or 3 decent games and you're thinking, okay, he's building in the right direction, and then it would kind of fizzle out, right? And this is where you're hoping this isn't the start of him fizzling out after a few decent performances, that it's just one off night as he steadily builds back up to being the player that we know he can be.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just raising that floor. How can you get there, right? Like, how can you get back to who you are? James Hansen in the chat, he said, the best player no one is talking about is Erik Branstrom. His stats are on par with Hughes at +5. I love it. I love some Erik Branstrom hype in the chat. It doesn't look like Branstrom's coming out tomorrow, nor should he. Erik Branstrom belongs in this lineup, and I'm really glad. That's one of my takes that's been proven correct a lot sooner than I thought it would, as he continues his progression into becoming the next Gustav Forsling. You ready to say it yet, Harm, or no?
No.
All right. Fair enough. Do you have anything else that you wanted to get to? Connor McDavid, do you want to talk about this real quick? Did you see the injury?
The only update I saw was him missing at least a game.
Yeah, so it looks like it's going to be a little bit longer. They have one game in the next 5 days against Nashville, obviously. So McDavid just flew back home to get assessed, but it's sounding like a high ankle sprain. I think it was Bob Stauffer that reported that, but it was a pretty innocuous looking play. Zach Werenski gets the stick in on Connor McDavid. He trips up and then he kind of goes up against the boards awkwardly, like his legs were up on the boards and he was sliding. So it was really just like, it looked like an awkward fall more than anything, but didn't look good, that's for sure. And then he kind of got up and he looked fine, but then he felt something, he skated off. And look, man, first shift in the game, he decides he's not returning. To me, that screams like, okay, this is something that they're going to need to get ready to play. They're going to need to get ready to play without him for at least one game. But I'd be shocked, I think, if he only misses one game. And he's been pretty durable in his career, but that didn't look good in my view.
Yeah, and the Canucks play Edmonton the first game after the end of that California trip on
November 9th.
Yeah, the Saturday. So we'll see if he's ready by then or not.
Beg Milk's going to join us on November 8th. I've already locked in that guest.
Let's
Usually
go.
We don't do that far in advance, but Beg Milk will join us on November 8th show. So folks, you can look forward to that show 2 weeks from today. Harm, anything else that you want to get to before we close out today's show?
Nope, that's it.
All right. We will be back tomorrow to preview the game between the Canucks and the New Jersey Devils. Who do I want tonight? I'm sure I don't need to take a victory lap. You know that I absolutely called it on the vibes pick last night.
Yeah, great call.
Leafs were coming out flying. Who should we take tonight, Harm? Who should we take tonight? Who do we like? Do you like the Sharks Do you like the Sharks after that
Go
win
with your vibes, man.
against the Utah Hockey Club? Those are
You're
the
the hot hand.
wonkiest. Those are the wonkiest odds you can find right now over on Bet365. We'll do it. We'll do it. Let's see. We'll do it. The San Jose Sharks are playing the LA Kings tonight. You can get the Sharks at plus 235 odds to take down the Kings in any fashion tonight. That one over at Bet365, a proud partner of Canucks Conversation. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Be sure to use code NATION when you sign up for an account. Sharks, my wagon Sharks. We will close it out there.
Your wagon Flames, by the way,
we'll talk about it another time.
lost 4 of their last 5 games. You might be owing me this pirate pack before the
I
new
might
year.
owe you a pirate pack. I might owe you a pirate pack. Rasmus Anderson's coming to Vancouver. We're going to talk about all that and so much more as we continue on. Look, we got shows to do, Harm. We got shows to do Thursday, Friday. There's going to be no game until Saturday. We got days off. So we're going to have lots of time to talk about the Flames, and we're going to have lots of time to talk about Rasmus Anderson. But we'll close it out there for my co-host, Harman Dylan, our technical producer, Jacob Lazar. My name is Dave Wujoli. Thank you so much for listening to an episode of Canucks Conversation. Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.